Well, good morning. Welcome to episode 6 of Boyce's Barrelback. Getting along really well. Episode 5, I think we did frame 4. That was all glued up and nailed. In fact, here it is here. Very pleased with that, how the joints have gone there. That's looks super strong. I put a bit of epoxy on here just to have a look at what the mahogany looks like, and I mean, it's just beautiful. So I've cut out the section of wood there for the keel timber. It's all nailed up. I've just really got to sand that down now, and oh, look at that joint is just beautiful. Sand it down in epoxy. I'll encapsulate it today. I'll do one day each side to let it go off. It goes pretty quickly now the temperature up here is mounting up. So that was 4. This is frame 5, which actually isn't too different from the last one. It's the deepest piece of wood. No, it's not. Frame 6 has got a 245. I've got 250 mahogany here for this purpose, and that's 243 down the bottom. But as you see, it's the sides are much the same. And when I did 4, I actually cut out the side frames, so I've marked them up here. 5 left. They're slightly wider, but I just as not to confuse on my table, I shifted the center line from there to there so that they wouldn't overlap. So I've got these done. It's just a question of cutting out the centerpiece, shaping it again, and that's what I'll be getting on with the next couple of days. It's not going to be it ain't going to be that different frame 5 to 4, so I don't think there's going to be an awful lot actually to talk about on this one, so I'll probably get on with it. When I get to 6 and 7, they're very different shapes, and a lot of wood needs some curves, cutting and so on, so I'll crack on with that and then probably talk my way through that. But I wanted to get a little bit of video done because I've upgraded my iMovie software, well, the free software on there, to the Final Cut Pro. They give you 90 days free, so I thought I'd have a crack at that and see if it was better. Although I must admit, iMovie does pretty much most of what I do. I don't want to do anything too fancy on the video. It doesn't seem to be any point. It's not that sort of video. It's more of an instructional sort of documentation of my build. So I'll have a go with it and see, have a look. But it's 3 months free, and then it's 299 quid, and I'm not sure at the moment I can see any point in spending that sort of money. But I'll see what the editing looks like and have a crack, and well, you could be the judge of it. Hi. Well, today's been a good day. Thunderstorms outside, raining like hell, but it is April, isn't it? April showers. I've been working on, let me see, frame 5. This one here. So we're getting there, just 6 and 7 to go, and this is it, all jigged up, ready to go. My plywood's cut, got my distance pieces in, it's screwed there, this is secured here, and this is all good to go. There's a bit of a gap there, but I will fill that in, and I had to just move that out just to make sure I got the line down the side here absolutely spot on. But that's okay, because that'll be full of glue, and that plywood will hold that solid. So all good. I'm going to be gluing up, and then that will be frame 5. And there it is. Frame 5 is glued up, at least on one side. This time I've just done it slightly different because it stuck to the desk last time when I did both pieces. So I've left the bottom plywood sheet out. I've put tracing paper underneath because it doesn't stick to tracing paper, and then tomorrow I can flip it over and put the plywood on the other side. I took Kevin's advice and I got my saw in there and to cut this piece out because I was having difficulty getting a flat piece, a flat there for the wood, the keel plank to lie on. So I cut it out with the bandsaw, and I just used a very sharp chisel even, to flatten that out. That seems to have worked quite well. So all good. Greetings and welcome to the basement. Here we are doing frames 6 and 7, and not had a great day at this, and so I just thought I'd make a point for people who are doing this, transferring these plans to a piece of, well, in this case my plywood desktop. I've done it once, and I used the original piece of plywood that's got frames 3 and 4 on there, and there's too many lines and it's all getting a bit complicated, and So once I've drawn them out, transferred from the plans onto the piece of plywood, I was checking with the setup level, with the distance from one of the turns of the chines to the setup level, and I found that they were different by as much as 8mm, which is obviously no good. And so I thought, I've just got to start that again. So I've binned that piece of plywood, put a nice fresh piece here on my desk and tacked it down, and then I've drawn the setup level on there, the center lines coming down there, and the setup level as goes all the way across there. So what I'm saying is that I think that I just didn't have this accurately pinned down. You now see I use there staples to hold this down, because just pulling a corner of the paperwork out shifts this line, you know, up and down 3 or 4mm quite easily, just because you've got slack in the paper, and you can't afford that. So what I've done is to set it up using the setup level to my piece of paper, to my line on my plywood. The same again on the top. You can see my center line there is bang on, and you come down here and the center line is bang on there, and then in the other corner this one is bang on to the setup level there, and I've pulled it tight, and then I've just stapled it down to stop the bloody piece of paper moving, and that's what I've got. And it's I'm just going to take this off, because I've done, here's the first, the right hand side, then you turn the plans over having double carbonated so that you get the picture or the line on the underside of the plan, which is not provided on Glenelg, because they've only given you the half plan of each frame, so you have to double carbonate to get it on the reverse. Then when you turn it over, single carbonate, and then you can just pencil down these lines, and hopefully it transfers. There's the carbon underneath. So let me take it off, and then we'll measure up again and see how accurate we are. Right, so here is frame 6, and frame 7 is the forward, and hence the sharpest V. And actually that's come out much better, but still not perfect. I was measuring this distance from the chine down to my setup level, and that was 86, I think it was, and this was 84. I'm still 2mm adrift, and a little bit more on this one. I mean, a pencil line's a millimetre thick, so within 2mm, that's okay. But I think the problem has come just the alignment of both sides. You can see there we're a couple of millimetres out on each of those, and that is reflected also up on the top here. And I tried my bloody hardest there to get the plans when they flip, by putting a pencil line through the tip and just seeing there if it would coincide with that, which I thought it did, but it hasn't worked. But not to worry, because each of these is a separate piece of wood, and obviously as long as I follow the lines here, I'm okay. The problem will be when I come to put the made up frame on here, this is not going to line up. So I'm going to have to go away and think about this. This is the trouble, is that when you've had a long day at this, and you're probably feeling a bit knackered, then it's probably as well just to put it all down and come back tomorrow and then have another go. I'm going to have to think about what I can do here to correct that little bit of error, because that's out of tolerance, really. That's what I was going to say. Be accurate with your plans, and I should take my own advice, really, shouldn't I? Let's see what I can come up with. Well, here we are again. I had the next morning, had a night of sleep to think about this little problem. Not that I've figured out really any reasons as to why this has happened, but what I have seen is that the line here is 5mm higher on the left. So this is obviously the main plans, on the face of the plans, and you put the carbon paper down and the carbon paper up, so that when you draw the line it carbonates onto the wood and also the back of the plans. So then when you reverse the plans, you just put the carbon paper down and you have a line on the back of the plans to draw, and it carbonates down onto the paper. So all being equal, that should have copied the frame left and right exactly as centered, but it didn't. This one here is kind of 5mm too high. This one here, that line is 5mm too high. And if I measure from, say, the chine up to the setup level, I mean, that's what, 87mm? And if I measure this one up to the chine, I mean that's 83, so that's 4 millimeters up. So it's a consistent error all the way round. We're 5 millimeters up, and if I were to put that down, that should bring it in the correct position. The thing is that I measured, I've got the center line, I've got the setup level, and I've got all 4 points on the plans set and stapled the plans down to the wood so that it couldn't move, so that I could join this, excuse me. So somewhere we have gone wrong with the plans, and I'm wondering, it's possible, isn't it? I mean, these are getting a little bit weather beaten now because I'm in and out of the plans getting tea stains and tears. It's also the rainy season, it's very humid. I'm wondering whether the humidity has an effect on the paper, expands it, and I guess 5 millimeters isn't a lot, is it, for most things to happen. So the only fix that I can see is to do this again, to rub this, sand this line out, and then put the plans on and drop the position on the setup level 5 millimeters down, and then have another go, and then that should correct all 4 corners. And as long as I'm on the center line, so that's the only thing I can think of at the moment to try to put this right. So I'll give it a go and I'll come back to you. So the moment of truth, this is the plans on the table. I've decided to, because I could have copied or redone either the left or the right, but the right hand side is a direct copy from the plans, the direct copy from the plans down onto the wood, and then the carbonating paper is face down and face up, so it copies the line onto the back of the plans as well. So I decided to do this side because this is like 2 copies. I mean, the width of the pencil line is 1 millimeter, so, but if there was an error it would be compounded twice, so I figured that this was the side that I should go for, because that was probably the one most in error. As long as these are symmetrical now, it really doesn't matter. So what I've done is, I mean, the center line you can see is bang on the center line, top and bottom. The setup level, I've put 5 millimeters lower there and 5 millimeters lower here. So I secured the plans down. I used this, my powered stapler, which is how we're going to use the cold planking on the bottom of the boat. Use that because you can pull these off a lot easier with your staple remover, albeit there's thousands of them. So this is the kind of the moment of truth, really, as to how this has gone. Oh, that's better, that's better. Let me get a pencil, I can mark it. You can see that was the line in error. This is the new one here, and that's the new one there. They're both meeting. Ah, Jesus. Oh, look at that, at the top as well. Brilliant. I wonder if anyone can tell me why I'm having that problem. I wonder if anyone can I mean, is it just the plans are getting a bit worn? Fortunately, this is the last 2 frames, isn't it? 6 and 7. So I won't have to do this again, but I've still got to cut the piece of wood, well, loosely, and then transfer the plans again, this line onto the wood, so I've got something to cut on the bandsaw. Good, so that's that little problem kind of solved. Another bit of good news, actually, this is the frame that excuse the music, Spotify adverts. This is the frame I did yesterday. This is 5. I glued him up and cleaned it up so it's ready. Look at this. I am really pleased with that joint. That's probably one of the better ones that I've done. That's worked perfectly. You can see from cutting that on the desk saw, that half depth, and that's just worked perfectly, sandwiched, and it's exactly the right width. That makes for a far more solid and strong join, rather than just as the plans would have you, which is just to butt this up to this piece of wood in there and then use the plywood as the strength. Now you've got all that area there to glue, and that's much the same here. It's looking really good. And the frame before, this is frame 4, which was the first one using the mahogany. I had some epoxy left over, so I sanded this, so that's had 2 coats of epoxy, and I mean, look at that. That is just the most beautiful piece of wood. So I'm hoping the decking was going to come out something like that. Frames, joints is equally as good. Down there, it's really looking good. I'm really pleased with how this is working out. That is going to be super strong, and that is going to be beautiful if I can get that on the decks, because I've got some of this to do the covering boards. Anyway, that's a bit in the future. So good news, I can get down now and start cutting out the wooden frames for these two, and I'll remember to use the right line. So, quick update. Don't know why my GoPro's showing a spanner on the front. I'm getting noise. I don't know, needs fixing. Quick update, I'm doing frame 6 at the moment, and I wasn't going to cover it in great detail, but there's some interesting points to cater for here. These are the frames here. This is what I'm trying to build here. As you can see, there's a lot more curvature and a lot more depth there in the chine as we get near to the front of the boat, and ultimately that's right at the front. These, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of wood. I've yet to cut out the top. I've done these, and there's a gap there in the middle because that's a space in there for the stem to fix to, and then that's actually bolted through to the stem section, and then in there it's a notch, so as it's on its way forward and curves down. And then behind there is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood floor, and it laps on the aft side of the frame. So as it's symmetrical, it doesn't matter as long as I've got that on the same side as this, because they're both on the aft side. So this is the piece here, and these are the notches that I've cut out for the stem to sit in there, and it's 10 centimeters, which will come to there. So I've glued up these halves. Yeah. Right, okay. As you can see, I've got the lines there on the board. I can fit everything too, so I'm doing pretty good. There's a bit of shaving to come off of here. I glued the one side, and then you can see now the curvature of these. So there's a lot more of the spoke shaving going on to take off, as I generally try and keep it about 1 millimeter off, so that I can just shave off just to get the curve, because the saw is never quite perfect when cutting that, and you get a couple of wobbles, which the spoke shaver takes off admirably. So I've done the same here, and as you can see, that's the rough curve there. You can just see it's just running on the lines, and it's a bit proud there, so I've got to spoke shave that off. The first interesting bit was this. It says 14.5 inches, which is 368 millimeters, and that's the flat, and that's up to the edge of what would be this piece of plywood. Oop, wrong way. Well, there's a line there, so you can see I've got to cut that off, and that's up to there, which is what it seems to be there. Now, if you look at that plan there, that piece of wood, as you can see, it just a very small triangle there, where it's just hits above that that line, the floorboard line there. But when I look at mine, there's considerably more above this line here, which is that line, because there's my setup level, and this is 76mm below. There it is. I've even marked it on there. So I put all centre lines and everything in here. So I don't know, just pitching forward, is it's the same on both sides, is this something that sits on here that would interfere with that, or that would interfere with, like, the boards or something? So I've been back and measured. I mean, these, it says, is 3.5 inches there wide, and 3.5 inches is 89mm. So at that bit there, I mean, that's as near as, damn it, to 89mm. And the same there, that's within 1 millimeter, but it's kind of 1 millimeter more of wood, so I don't mind that. I was just wondering whether to put that up on the forum as to whether there's something that will sit here that will interfere with, but whatever. I'm not going to be chopping that down by about 1 centimeter there to reduce the strength. That would be crazy, because all the other frames are continuous pieces of wood, and this has got a join in it. So the reason I've drawn these lines is because I'm thinking of putting a piece of mahogany. In fact, I'm just about to cut it in there and gluing that, just so that these were taking enormous pounding from the waves, because this is what's parting the water, particularly the next one. And so a little bit of a strengthening piece there might not go amiss. You won't see it because this is on the aft side,
a little bit more weight up the front of the boat, but I mean, this is like, you know, a couple of 100 grams of mahogany, maybe 250 plus the glue, but the strength gives that is worth the peace of mind. I think it's probably unnecessary because it's not on the plans, but you know, I've done a couple of things extra. I mean, here's another one up here that this is added here to give the top frame something to sit on, because otherwise it would be that wide. What happens is you come here, there's 2 shear strakes to cut out here, so you know, you've got what, 50-60 mil of wood for that deck beam to sit on, and by adding that I've put another 15 mil on, which seems to me to be a sensible addition to give it something to hold on to. So that's where we are. I'm just about to start cutting and gluing these up. I've got these cut out. As you can see from here, now I've got the curve here. I'm leaving 1 or 2 millimeters on the bandsaw to get the spoke shave in once they're glued, to bring them back to profile. But on the triangular cut, I don't want to cut because it's very difficult to get anything in there to trim that. So I split the line there, and then I'm just making up my infill piece, which will also strengthen that corner. So I'll get together, glue that, I'll make this infill piece, and then I've got to make the top piece, and that will conclude frame 6. Good. Greetings. So here we are, we're chomping on with frame 6, not without its problems. So I'm going to put one up here and see if anybody knows the answer, but there's a forum, and I think I'll probably take a couple of pictures and just see if what I've done is correct. Here's the work so far. This is frame 6. Not done the cross piece across the top yet, just because I can't sit it like this because it's curved. And so this is a good way just to check that the nose section, which is there, which fits in here, and I've made a super tight connection there, so that's as solid as a rock. Actually it has 2 screws in there, but I can't put this in just yet because obviously I need to dismantle this at some point and take it away to its final assembly point. So it's been much the same. I've done the frames as before, and I've jointed these bits. They've come out very well. There's this piece of plywood on the back, and then I've used actually a scrap piece of the mahogany just to add another piece in here, just to give this more strength, because the 2 frames here, obviously they don't meet, they're not continuous, which is a weak point, and we've just got that 18mm marine ply holding it together. And I just thought, you know, this is kind of the chine up front, and as you're getting a slightly deeper section, so you're going to get a lot of water pressure here with a boat ploughing on at 25 knots. Which are going to be trying to break this, so this piece of wood here would just give these 2 bits something to strengthen it up, and it encloses this section here, rather than just holding in there and being screwed. It gives it a cup effect, because the whole thing is mitered to allow this piece of 3 bits of plywood in there, so that it gives it a really good strong. I mean, look at this. This is like this is so solid, and I haven't even screwed and glued it yet, so I'm quite pleased about that. So this is for the keel section. There's 2 pieces of wood, 2 planks to go in there, which will sit on there, and they butt into here, so they fare in nicely to the nose section, and then these will be screwed down into each of the frames, and obviously to this it will be glued in, so that's really nice. This will be fared in to meet the bow section, so that's looking good. The problem, here's the problem. This is frame 6, and it says there specifically 14.5 inches, 368 millimeters, which is what are we? Anyway, I'm not quite sure why that is specified there, when this frame here obviously cuts that corner, so it's not a flat piece of wood. If something was to sit in there 29 inches wide, it would hit those corners, and it looks as though it's just cuts those corners. In reality, as you can see, mine is considerably more on both sides. Maybe that's just a drawing thing, I don't know. But coming back to the motor stringers here, we've discussed before this 1/2 inch cut for all of the frames to fit in, and this is frame 6, and it cuts in there. So all these frames, the extra piece of cross wood is on the front of the frame, and on these two it's on the back of the frame, which is what I've done here. And that plywood seems to notch into, but whether it goes through that frame or not is unclear. So here's the end section, and you can see the notch here. This is the motor stringer. This is the frame, the detachable frame that will come off eventually, and they're just notched in. And we've got some specific dimensions, 26 inches or 660mm, plus the motor stringer. So the motor stringer, it says 2 are required. They're cut from 2-inch nominal stock and apply 3/8-inch plier to the outer layer to one side, which is what I've done. And this is what I've got. So we've got 660mm, which is the distance between. We've got, mine are 54mm each. It's just the dimensions they've come out with. 2 lots of 54, and you can see there I've drawn the plywood on the outside. So that makes 768 wide. So 660 plus 108 is 768. That's the one. And frame 6 is 14.5 inches, which is, I think I worked out 368.3, and 368.3 is 736mm. Call it 737. So that's what I've got, and that's the motor stringers, which means that I'm 31mm adrift. In other words, the motor stringers are 31mm wider than this gap here, even without those little cuts there. So this is what I propose to do. From my centre line, I've measured out my 768, which comes to there, which means I just need to notch that out there. But I can't cut through that member itself, because this is a structural member, and if I cut that, look at that, that's like, we've got about 60mm then of wood, which makes pointless all this lovely strong wood that we're doing here. So I don't know, I think I should just cut that piece there, this plywood off, and then notch that that engine stringer, the motor stringer, just pop it in there, and then I can screw it through from the back, and it will just sit on that 18mm plywood there, and a bit of 12mm plywood just there, and the same there. You can see it's not a great idea for it to hang on, but it's downward pressure. Obviously this is upside down, and with the engine sitting on that and the weight, the pressure is down there, and this is right forward, whereas the engine will be aft. And that's what I think. But you know, with all these things, you come up against these problems. You come up against the problems and you're not entirely sure what to do, so you have to go away. What I do, I go away and think about it for a night, and come back and see if I can come up with a better plan. But at the moment, the plans were a little bit indistinct on there, and that piece there, 14.5 or 368mm, really not sure quite what that is for. I mean, that's what I've done. The plywood here, from the centre line to there, is the 368mm. So I've built it all correct, I'm pretty sure. Let me show you. There, 368mm from the edge of the plywood, which is what it says there. And this piece here is 3.5 inches, and 3.5 inches is 89. And I can show you 89. I think I've got 90mm. I'm an 89, 90. There it is. Hi. With regard to my little problem as regards frame 6 and those conflicting sizes, I took a few photos and wrote a little spiel up on the Facebook Glenelg forum, which is very, very useful. almost instantly I got 4 guys who came back and said, yeah, the plans are a little vague in the... Sorry, that's the pressure pump for doing the irrigation. And they said, yeah, don't cut into the actual frame. That's the structural strength of the boat. Just notch the gusset plywood out and rest the motor stringer on that, which is what I shall do tomorrow. I've been doing other things. This is my top piece of wood for frame 6. Which is another very deep piece of wood which I don't have, so I've had to glue a little piece on the bottom here just to get the curvature, which I'll cut out tomorrow. And I've started building, whilst that was going off, the support frames for the motor stringers. There's the first one, and then the second one has got huge cutouts. You may remember I built the first one out of some chipboard, and as soon as I put the weight of that stern transom section on it, it just broke, so I've had to use some more substantial pieces of wood. Anyway, I've got about 30 minutes I think now, so that's more than enough I think for episode 6, so I will get this off and get it published if I can work out, because Final Cut Pro is having its teething problems with me, or rather I'm having the teething problems. Subscribe if you wish. Hopefully there's a button put on the bottom here by YouTube now automatically, and then you'll get notified of any future editions. Any comments, feedback or ideas, suggestions is always gratefully received. So I'll catch you at episode 7. Cheers.